Jean-Claude Van Damme, the immortal muscles from Brussels, the man who once made the entire world hold its breath. Frank Dux in Bloodsport, Kurt Sloan in Kickboxer, the unforgettable twins in Double Impact. He wasn't just another action star, he was a force of nature, a storm of power and elegance, a living monument from Hollywood's golden age of martial arts cinema. His splits defied the limits of the human body. His spinning kicks, his piercing gaze, burned themselves into the memory of millions. In the 80s and 90s, his name alone meant adrenaline, spectacle, and a new kind of hero. But behind the flashing lights and thunderous applause were wounds that never fully healed, 5 marriages broken, addictions that almost destroyed him, scandals that dragged his pride into the dirt, and demons that never stopped stalking him in the quiet hours of the night. Now at 63, Van Damme doesn't fight for glory anymore. He fights for survival, against scars the audience never sees. The battles today aren't choreographed. They are cruel, messy, and real. And yet, behind those tired eyes live secrets, stories never fully told. What pains still burn in silence? What tragedies shape the legend? The answers are haunting, heartbreaking, and unforgettable. Born Jean-Claude Camille Francois Van Varenberg on October 18, 1960, in Bertram St. Agatha, a quiet corner near Brussels, his world began modestly. His father Eugene was an accountant who dealt in strict numbers. His mother, Eliana, filled their home with flowers and gentle color. His sister Veronique was his only playmate. On the surface, it was an ordinary childhood. But the mirror told the crueler story. A skinny boy with thick glasses, mocked endlessly as 4 eyes. A dreamer trapped in a body too weak to carry his dreams. At 11 years old, standing before his reflection, humiliated, he swore to rewrite the ending of his own story. His first battles weren't fought in a ring. They were waged in silence, against ridicule, against doubt, against the heavy loneliness of being invisible. His father, sensing the storm brewing inside him, enrolled Jean-Claude at the Centre National de Karate under Master Claude Goetz. There, discipline was beaten into his bones. 4 brutal years of drills, bruises, sweat, and blood transformed the fragile boy into a fighter. At 18, he earned his black belt in Shotokan Karate and joined Belgium's national team. He had finally learned how to turn shame into strength and fear into fuel. But karate wasn't enough. To the laughter of his peers, he turned to ballet. 5 merciless years on the bar, stretching tendons until they screamed, balancing until every muscle trembled. Ballet is the hardest, he would later say. If you can survive ballet, you can survive anything. He completed the transformation with bodybuilding, sculpting the skinny kid into steel. By 1978, the world took notice. He won the title of Mr. Belgium. But the trophy wasn't the victory. The true prize was belief. One restless night at age 12, Jean-Claude slipped into a church alone. There, he whispered 3 impossible wishes: to save the world, to protect nature, and to become a movie star. Naive? Maybe. But for a lonely boy searching for light, those prayers became his compass. From the Belgian parish to the punishing ballet studio, from shame to black belt discipline, Van Damme was already rehearsing for the fight of his life, not against villains on screen, but against the darkness inside and the world's brutal certainty that he would never be enough. Armed with nothing but his body and his will, he left Belgium. With only $3,000, a broken accent, and a dream too big to contain, he landed in America in 1982 with his friend Michel Kissy. But Hollywood didn't roll out a red carpet. Nights were spent curled in the backseat of a battered car, upholstery torn, windows fogged with his own breath, his stomach twisting violently from hunger. Sometimes he stole food, an apple, here, a sandwich there, not from arrogance, but from desperation. Days blurred into weeks of pounding pavement, knocking on studio doors, enduring rejection after rejection. Some say more than 100, each one slicing him deeper. Each laugh at his accent, each slammed door was another scar. And yet, even with an empty stomach, he woke up every morning to stretch, to train, to split until pain screamed through his legs. Every day I said thank you in advance for my success, he later admitted. Madness, maybe, but belief was all he had left. To survive, he worked wherever he could, delivering pizzas, laying floors, driving limousines, bouncing in Chuck Norris's bar Woody's Wharf. The irony was brutal, protecting strangers at night while dreaming of being the hero on screen. Still, he kept showing up. Still, he kept offering his fists and his smile, waiting for someone to notice. By 1984, he managed to flicker on screen, a background dancer in Breakin'. That same year, he joined Chuck Norris's stunt team in Missing in Action. The pay was almost nothing, but at least he bled for the camera. Finally, in 1986, came a role with a face and a name, the Russian villain Ivan in No Retreat, No Surrender. A cheap film, but for him, a victory that tasted like sunlight after years of rain. And then, in 1988, the world finally looked his way. Bloodsport hit the screens, and with it, Jean-Claude Van Damme erupted into legend. On screen, he was Frank Dukes, fighting in a hidden tournament. In reality, he was fighting for every freezing night in that car, every slammed door, every insult that said he would never make it. The film, made on a shoestring $1.5 million budget, exploded into a global sensation. When Bloodsport came out, he later confessed, "I cried because the little boy in Belgium was finally seen." The tidal wave had begun. Kickboxer followed, turning a modest budget into $50 million cillion, immortalizing the image of a drunken dance breaking into a perfect split kick. Then came Lionheart, Death Warrant, and Double Impact 2 Van Dammes for the price of one, and Universal Soldier, where he clashed with Dolph Lundgren in a showdown that thundered past $100 million, but the summit came with Time Cop, box office gold, critical respect, and proof that Jean-Claude wasn't just a fighter, he could act, he could break hearts. Even video games bent to his aura. Mortal Kombat's Johnny Cage was molded in his likeness, initials and swagger intact. The skinny boy with glasses, once mocked as a joke, had become a global icon. But at the very peak of his glory, when it seemed nothing could stop him, that's when the shadows he thought he had outrun came rushing back. And what they destroyed was far darker than any villain he faced on screen. He was reshaping Hollywood itself, yet the cruel irony was already leaking through the glamour. The dream that once rescued him from hunger was now chaining him in golden shackles. Van Damme later admitted with raw honesty, "I was working too much, flying from set to set. I couldn't see my family. Stardom had saved him once, but now it was devouring him piece by piece. Behind the million-dollar smile, his eyes grew darker, carrying shadows no camera could hide." At home, empty chairs at the dinner table spoke louder than applause. His first marriage to Maria Rodriguez had already cracked under the weight of his ambition. She was the quiet anchor he left behind in Belgium when Hollywood's siren call grew too loud. By the time he arrived in America with nothing but a suitcase and a dream, their vows had unraveled. She would later confess life with him was unbearable, as if loving him meant standing in the middle of a storm. For Van Damme, it was the first brutal lesson. Every step toward fame demanded sacrifice. Cynthia Derian came next, a wealthy American who offered stability when he was still climbing. For a moment, it looked like redemption, but obsession was louder than love. Cynthia later summed it up in one devastating line: living with Van Damme was hell because he only loved himself. Their marriage lasted a single year, leaving behind no children, only the echo of what could have been. Then came Gladys Portugues, the strong bodybuilder who gave him two children, Christopher and Bianca. On the surface, they looked like the perfect family. But Hollywood's temptations crept in, whispers of infidelity spread, and in 1992 the marriage crumbled. The man who could break bricks with his heel couldn't keep his own home from falling apart. Years later, he admitted the pain of watching his children grow up without him was worse than any beating he ever took on screen. But the darkest wound came with Darcy Lapierre. They married in 1994, welcomed their son Nicholas, and for a fleeting moment, Van Damme believed he had finally found peace. Yet temptation never let go. Affairs, scandals, and rumors followed him like shadows. Darcy accused him of being volatile. Tabloids splashed his betrayals across headlines, and by 1997, it was over. The true devastation wasn't the divorce, it was custody. When Nicholas was taken from him, Van Damme later confessed in a cracked voice, "Not seeing my son, it broke me." That heartbreak dragged him into the darkest corner of his life: addiction. By the mid-90s, whispers became headlines. Some reports claimed he was consuming up to 10 grams a day, a dose that could kill an ordinary man. On the set of Street Fighter, he vanished for days at a time, lost in the undertow. The camera still rolled, but Hollywood was watching its brightest star burn out. And then came the lawsuits. A stunt accident left a fellow performer blind in one eye. Courts ordered nearly $500,000 in settlement, but the heavier cost was written on Van Damme's conscience. The muscles from Brussels had conquered the box office. But now, with addiction clawing at his veins, scandals on every front page, and a family shattered beyond repair, the question hung heavy. Could the man who had fought his way out of poverty, ridicule, and rejection survive the fight against himself, the lawsuits, the bar fights, the humiliation? By 1997, the myth of Jean-Claude Van Damme began crumbling in front of the entire world. Frank Dux, the martial artist whose story had helped make Van Damme famous, hauled him into court, accusing him of stealing a script. Van Damme won the case, but in the court of public opinion, the damage was done. The headlines screamed of betrayal, greed, and a fallen hero. That same year, in a crowded New York bar, biker actor Chuck Zito, reportedly knocked him flat in front of stunned witnesses. For the man who could defeat giants on screen, being floored in real life turned into tabloid gold. Every paper seemed eager to print his downfall. Hollywood, once obsessed with him, started pulling back. At his peak, Van Damme demanded $20 million a picture, rivaling Jim Carrey. But now, studios balked. Contracts slipped through his fingers. The word blacklisted crept into whispers. The tidal wave of stardom that had carried him so high finally crashed, leaving him stranded in silence. And in that silence, Van Damme broke. Alone in a Hong Kong hotel room, he admitted later that he thought about ending it all. The boy who once prayed in a Belgian church for strength now stared into the abyss, ready to surrender. This wasn't a scene no director could yell, "Cut." No applause could drown out his despair. By 1999, flashing police lights replaced red carpets arrested for DUI. His mugshot replaced the glossy posters of his prime. To fans, it was unthinkable. To Van Damme, it was proof that the hero was gone, leaving only a ghost stumbling through the ruins of his own legend. The cruelest twist of all, the dream that had lifted him from hunger and loneliness was now stripping him of everything that made life worth living. But the real fight was never against Hollywood. It was against himself. That same year, doctors diagnosed him with bipolar disorder. Suddenly, the chaos of his life had a name. The manic highs, where he could train 20 hours straight without sleep, followed by devastating lows where getting out of bed felt impossible. Addiction had poured gasoline on the fire, dragging him deeper into darkness. For years, fame hadn't been scripting his life. Illness had. The diagnosis was both devastating and liberating. It explained the storms that had cost him marriages, friendships, nearly his career. But it also gave him a chance to fight back. Medication, therapy, and, most of all, discipline. The same ballet, karate, and bodybuilding that had once transformed a frail boy into a star now became survival itself. Every stretch, every split, every drop of sweat wasn't for a movie. It was to stay alive. Recovery wasn't glamorous. It was nights of shaking, days of doubt, relapses, and shame. But every time he fell, he forced himself up again. Slowly, painfully, Van Damme broke free. By the early 2000s, he left drugs behind. With steady treatment, he managed his bipolar disorder. Not cured, but controlled. And in that control, he found clarity. Without discipline, he later admitted, "I would not have survived." And something unexpected happened. By speaking openly about his illness, he shattered the myth of invincibility and destroyed the stigma around mental health. Fans who once idolized his kicks now found courage in his honesty. Van Damme had proven that strength isn't the absence of weakness, but the courage to face it. In 2008, he delivered the performance that changed everything. In JCVD, he broke the fourth wall with a 6-minute raw, tearful monologue. No splits, no high kicks, just truth. Time magazine called it Oscar-worthy. Fans called it unforgettable. It wasn't a performance. It was resurrection. From there, the legend began to burn again. Universal Soldier, Regeneration, 2009. Day of Reckoning, 2012. And in The Expendables 2, he stole the show as a villain so magnetic that critics said Van Damme never left. Statues rose in Brussels, Munich, and Azerbaijan. Then came the 2013 Volvo commercial, the epic split between two moving trucks that went viral worldwide. The internet erupted. Van Damme was back, not just as an action star, but as a cultural icon. Yet his truest comeback wasn't on screen. It was at home. After years of betrayal and heartbreak, he found his way back to Gladys Portegas, the woman who had given him children, Christopher and Bianca, and more importantly, unconditional love. Their marriage was battered, almost destroyed, even threatened by divorce papers as late as 2015. But they chose forgiveness over pride, healing over finality. She became his lighthouse, guiding him back from the abyss. Today, at 63, Van Damme lives in peace, not chaos. With a net worth of around $40 million, he owns villas in Los Angeles, Brussels, and Hong Kong. But these aren't just properties. They're monuments to survival. Every marble floor, every courtyard is a reminder of the boy who once slept hungry in a broken car. His training remains his ritual. Daily stretches, splits, strict diet, meditation. Not for the cameras. For his soul. His body aches. His face carries lines, but his eyes still burn with the fire of survival. The wrinkles aren't flaws. They're proof. Proof that legends may age, but they never fade. And at the center of it all, Gladys, his anchor, his proof that redemption isn't found in box office numbers, but in family and forgiveness. Van Damme no longer chases immortality. Instead, he lives with balance, discipline, and gratitude. His story is bigger than cinema, bigger than fame. It's a reminder that no matter how high you rise, no matter how far you fall, redemption is always possible. He was the muscles from Brussels. He became a broken man. And now he stands as something far greater, a survivor. A fighter who proved that the greatest battles aren't fought on screen but inside the human heart. If his movies lit a fire in your youth, if his resilience inspires you now, share your memory below. Because Jean-Claude Van Damme isn't just Hollywood's past. He's living proof that legends can break and still rise again.